Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the Silver Stacking Dad back at you with some updated information on is the dollar collapsing? That's the question everybody's wondering, and have just a little bit of information that's came to light over the last day that I'd like to just go over. We've been aware of some of this for some time, slowly creeping up, which some believe inflation. We've got here from AgriLife today. It's the educational literature here under farm and ranch, life and health. Just kind of go skim through this for you. I don't want to make this video too long. It just says, does higher food prices reflect a variety of factors? Factors contributing to some higher prices at local grocery stores are the result of a perfect storm, which seem to be we are already seeing consumers paying more for many grocery items, including beef, poultry, fish, as well as dairy items and a number of other household staples. Says with the pandemic, along with an ice storm, a drought, fuel increases and supply disruptions, slowdowns in shipping, and a head snapping return in demand, there are more than a few reasons consumers are seeing an increased food price. Of course, none of the printing off of all this money has anything to do with it. Increased cost to feed poultry and livestock. And Anderson said one significant factor in the rising cost of meat items is the increased cost of feed, which I know much about this. We've got a lot of farmer friends, and they'll all agree that those costs are going up for poultry and livestock, which is made of primary of corn and soybean meal. Cows, chickens, goats, sheep, and other farm animals have diets that are highly dependent on the feed. So, of course, the increased costs for these commodities, along with increases in fuel and transportation costs, energy costs, and agricultural inputs, such as fertilizer, eventually get passed along to the consumer. Right? They pay more, you pay more. He said many problems with the supply chain disruptions, increased fuel costs, disturbances in reliability of transportation and labor, of course, it says here, and a trend towards inflation have also been factors in food price increases, he said. So there we go. There's some mention of there. It says the pipeline hack had no major agriculture setbacks, which, yeah, maybe a little there. Supply chain issues related to the I-40 bridge. Looks like we have, far more significant to agriculture than the Colonial Pipeline shutdown was the issue. The I-40 bridge, he said, there's a huge amount of agriculture-related barge traffic along the upper Mississippi and the rivers that fed into it. So of course some supply chain disruptions there. So I think they're kind of conditioning us to accept a food shortage this year, or just end up paying more due to all these determining factors. So it talks about U.S. showed 45% of commodity moved via inland waterways, 35% moved by rail, and 20 moved by truck. Says winter's storm, prolonged drought in Texas. So a lot of us were aware of that. Weather disturbances, which are out of ordinary for that area. So they're dealing with a lot of that. Beef cattle producers are still working to replace the livestock that they lost. But then you come over here and you look at the commodity prices. Commodity price increases do not create inflation. This is from Forbes here, which I don't necessarily believe that. I think they go kind of hand in hand. Some would disagree and say they're two completely different beasts. But I think, if inflation starts to occur, commodity prices go up. If commodity prices start to go up, of course, it might be due to inflation to some degree. So it's a little bit of both, I think, working hand in hand together. But then we come here. This is just a recap on the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar over time. It gives you a rundown history. The Federal Reserve Act creates a central bank with the ability to manage the country's money supply. That was back in the, what was that, 1915 or so, I think. I'd have to check up on my history. That was quite some time ago. And then, it's just the decline in it afterwards. It shows here on the 30s, the stock market crashes, Great Depression, of course. Roosevelt criminalized the possession of gold, which I could see happening again, gold and silver, begging us to give it back to them for the industrial use. So be expecting that, guys. The Bretton Woods Agreement establishes the gold standard and the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. The gold standard is abandoned and currencies are no longer linked to gold. So it kind of, went up but then declined again. So it kind of shows. And then the U.S. money supply grew by 3.8 trillion in 2020, equal to 20% of all dollars ever created. And then we went to 40%, I think, recently. So that's insane. 40% of the dollars ever created were within this last year. And then it talks about, what you could buy, what a dollar bought you. 10 rolls of toilet paper, 10 bottles of beer, 20 bottles of Coca-Cola, 10 bags of pretzels, with a side of diabetes, I guess. But one drive-in movie ticket, 11 or 17 oranges, 2 boxes of crayons, etc. And you can check all this information out. I'll share it in the description below. But here's the biggest thing right here. The Fed this summer will take another look, stepping in the developing of a digital currency. The Federal Reserve will release a research paper this summer that explores a move to a central bank digital currency. These central banks, they are the enemy, guys. They are manipulating the silver and gold prices, driving them down while propping up their fiat, as well as the oil reserve. So they got to keep that high as well. As many of us know, the Federal Reserve is moving forward in its efforts to develop its own digital currency, announcing Thursday it will release a research paper this summer that explores the move further. This is the death of the dollar, guys. I mean, I can feel it within my core. Our currency that we've come to know for a very long time is dying in front of us through printing off all this money. And the government wants to tell you that this is all temporary, no worries, while they're trying to find another plan to keep us all dependent. And you can expect a UBI, universal basic income, through all this, destroying the middle class, just creating extreme poverty and complete control over the masses. So through the central bank, did not set any specific plans for the currency, but of course, we know how that goes, right? They have plans. But yeah, I just wanted to give this to you guys and let you know. Take it easy.